Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Cloherty here with Mike Murillo in the Glass Enclosed Nerve Center. And today we're talking about Mike's series called Fallen But Not Forgotten, about those who have been killed in action and missing in action, American service members whose remains have never been recovered. And we rolled this series out on Memorial Day for obvious reasons. But we just have a lot more to talk about. Mike found out some really interesting things, especially if you're interested in the topic of World War II and our American service members. First of all, let's talk about, starting with the Department of Defense. Obviously, you approach them first to kind of figure out how they go about doing this, how they go about finding these service members from World War II.
Yeah, the Defense Accounting Agency, it's actually the Defense POWMIA Accounting Agency, is a sub-department of the Department of Defense.
Okay.
Their job essentially is to bring missing in action, killed in action service members home. So we're talking every war from World War II through the Persian Gulf War. And an important thing to note is with the numbers, I mean, we're talking 82,000 people for all those wars combined, unaccounted for after those wars.
Wow.
And now, if you put World War II, just put that aside, 72,000 people unaccounted for after World War II. So a very big task. Now, it is important to mention, when I did talk to the director, Kelly McCaig, of the DPAA, he did say that 34,000 they believe are recoverable from World War II, because the rest were probably deep sea losses and things like that, where right now we unfortunately just don't have the technology to go and find these people because of how they were lost in the war.
And when preparing for this interview, Mike was telling me that you'd think that this operation had been going on for a really long time, but it's pretty recent.
Yes, they were going from Vietnam essentially through the first Persian Gulf War. That's what the department, now they've kind of changed names throughout, but the Department of Defense has always had some sort of wing that was looking into MIAs and POWs. But it wasn't until 2010, a Congress mandate came out that said you need to not only find 200 missing in action POWs a year and, identify them, bring them home, give their families closure finally, but you also have to add World War II to that list. So a lot of people may have thought that the government was actively looking, and maybe they were at some point, and there are different things going on throughout, but you may realize lately we see a lot of stories popping up saying World War II veteran. Well, that's because it's now a part of the main mission. The director of the DPAA said it is a nascent mission, meaning it's early on right now, and they're still trying to get everything together. I think what was so fascinating to me is I covered a couple funerals. I covered one where I didn't actually get to go to the funeral, but I talked to the family right after it happened. And I talked to one where I actually went to the funeral and watched a full honors funeral at Arlington National Cemetery with, no matter who you are, that brings tears to your eyes to watch this. I mean, you're looking at families here, though. All the ones I talked to never met the person that they lost. So we're talking people who heard the stories, and you're talking to these people like they knew the person.
Right.
That's the person. They knew their stories. They knew what they did in college, all the shenanigans they did, and that sort of thing.
Like the family stories passed down.
And they're laughing about it like, you're sitting around Christmas and talking about this loved one, but they never knew them. And that was a sobering thought to me when you really think about it. And as we talked about earlier, you're dealing with families who, most of the people who knew these people who we lost, these service members, these heroes we lost, they weren't around. They weren't around when the ones who were with them passed on by now. So,
right. But the impression that they left on the family, and I'm sure family members know how important finding that person was to the rest of their family. One
interesting story on that, one of the first family I talked to, the Sinowitz family, Raymond Sinowitz, died in a Cabanatuan POW camp. Essentially, there was the Battle of Corregidor, and that was one of the points, a low point for the U.S. in the war, because we had tens of thousands of U.S. and Filipino service members who were captured. They were captured by the Japanese, and they were marched 69 miles through a thing called the Bataan Death March, where many died on the route because they were given little water, little food, and they had to march 69 miles to a POW camp, where then again more died there, and Raymond Sinowitz, Private Raymond Sinowitz, died of malnutrition. So his brother was also in the war and came back home, and it was really his mission after they were told that your loved one was not, we believe they were killed and they have died, but we're not sure if we can recover them. So essentially, you're just kind of left with, and it was only believed we knew they died. They couldn't confirm it. So one of the family members I talked to, his nephew, who's named after him, Raymond Sims, first name Raymond, his dad named him after his brother, who he never found. And he said, the hard part was just not knowing. I mean, you never had that concrete closure that a lot of people get when you lose someone who you care dearly about.
Right.
But The father of Raymond Sims, again, the one who named him after his brother, he made it his life's mission to find his brother. So he was actually the one who found a log that was kept at that POW camp. The POWs there were actually secretly keeping a log of who died on what day to try to give some guidance. Now, again, you had to keep that secret because that could get you in trouble or worse in that situation. I mean, these were deplorable situations these people were in.
The conditions,
Yeah, so he said that the father, till his dying day, he tried, because he promised his mother, the mother of the fallen service member, that I'm going to find his brother.
Yeah.
He never got to do that, but there was his son, April of this year, just last month. They're finishing his dad's mission. It's giving me chills thinking about it right now, because you're talking about a guy who spent his every living day after the war trying to find different things, find information,
right,
and to bring his brother home finally. He even had an idea of what cemetery he was in, but it wasn't until after he died that it was able to get the government went in and exhumed the body and identified and brought him home.
Mike's series is called Fallen But Not Forgotten. You can find it on WTOP.com. And we have the audio there for you too, right?
We do. We have some audio there for you. You can hear some of the sound and see some of the pictures from one of the full honors funeral for Corporal John McNichol, who died in World War II in the Battle of Tarawa. So.
Interesting. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.